Hey folks, welcome back. It's good to have you here. I am very much looking forward to this podcast today with our guest, Veronica Love. Welcome, Veronica.
Thank you, Forrest.
It's good to have you here.
Good to be here.
I'm, I've done over 30 podcast episodes. I don't know the exact number. I don't think I've ever read a bio at the beginning of a podcast, but I'm going to read yours because it's so beautiful. So I'm going to do that real quick. Veronica, our guest today, is a woman whose life began at the intersection of two revolutions, born in the shadow of the 1976 Argentinian coup into a family who had already survived the Chilean military uprising. Her very arrival was an act of both political and physical defiance. While her earliest years were marked by the echoes of gunfire in Argentina, she later grew up in a Chilean home in California where the sounds of kitchen table stories influenced her becoming. These formative experiences led her to her current work, focusing on the biology of belonging, deciphering the cellular memories that dictate how we hide or how we show up in the world. As a seasoned coach, a licensed acupuncturist, a visual artist, and the CEO of Newfield Network, Veronica bridges the gap between somatic wisdom, conscious leadership, and world-class coach training. She's also the author of an upcoming poetry collection that explores the alchemy of transformation, rooted in the belief that our most poisonous experiences can become the very source of our liberation. Wow. Wow. Okay. So I just want to take a moment and take in the bio we just read. Like I'm just so grateful to be here with you. And um yeah, let me check and make sure I get it. So you were born in Chile initially, born in Argentina initially.
Correct. I was born in Argentina.
I was wondering why I put this shirt on. This shirt's handmade from Argentina.
There you go.
Okay. So born in Argentina, moved to California at how old?
So my parents escaped the military coup in Chile in 1973, and they were exiled basically to Argentina. And then when I was just about the time I was born, there was the Argentinian coup that happened. And so then we were exiled, we escaped and came to the US when I was 1.5.
And you've been living in the US since. Is that right?
I've been living in the US since then. Yes, I've traveled a lot, and I did live in Chile for about a year after I went to UC Santa Cruz. Mhm.
Yeah, there's a connection I feel with you, and I mean I live in Colombia right now, and I feel this United States Latin American connection. I want to name my ignorance here. I don't know about the Chilean military coups, and I don't know a lot about Argentina and Chile's history. So I just want to throw that out there, just so you know, I'm very ignorant on these topics, and um, yeah, I'm just so I mean I get the sense being with you that these movements, larger cultural movements, have really shaped you, and I'm curious if that resonates, and if yes, if you want to speak about that.
Sure. Yes, absolutely. I think that my experience has been that, us human folks are very shaped by our histories, our ancestry, our lineages, all of that. And I think for myself in particular, very much so. Um, my grandfather actually was also exiled. It's actually a really fascinating story. He was living during the time of a war and in Spain at the time, and was um, very challenged by the circumstances. He was actually at the point where he was eating like rats. I mean, there was nothing left. And, it was just this moment of deep despair. And he remembered his mother telling him that he had a cousin in Chile that was a famous boxer. And this is, way back when the Spanish War was way back when. And so he, out of despair, wrote a letter. And he didn't, just said to the famous boxer in Chile, something, something, right? And the letter traveled by boat, so took forever to arrive in Chile. And somehow, miraculously, the letter arrived and made it to the hands of the famous boxer in Chile. And that boxer sent my grandfather a ticket to leave Spain. And that's how he escaped the war. So he arrived to Chile as an immigrant. And then my father was at the time working for the government for Allende. He was a lawyer at that time. And then there was a military coup with Pinochet, who basically the right took over the military and overthrew the government that had been elected by the people. So unlike many Latin America countries, Chile has actually had a fairly stable historical political climate. But this was one of the major overthrows of the government. And so at that time, they sent word that they were searching for my father. And so my family escaped. I was not yet born. My family escaped and made it to Argentina. And when they landed in Argentina, it was a different place, a different culture, different circumstances. And so they were just really trying to orient themselves from being expelled from their homeland. And during that time, it was a very challenging time in Argentina. Very often people would get their paycheck and they'd like run to the bank because a matter of hours would mean a huge discrepancy in the currency, and what was worth something in one moment was not worth the same, a few hours later. So it was very uncertain times. And yet both my parents wanted another child. That my mother had a son from her first marriage, and then my sister from both my parents. And so they really wanted another child, which I find fascinating given the circumstances they were in. And my mother actually had two miscarriages between my sister and I. And I think it was just the tension of the times and being in the throes of coups and all of this. And then I arrived. And when I arrived, my mother has relayed the story many times to me. She went into the birthing center, and the doctor who was supposed to support her during her laboring process and her were from different political sides. And so there was a lot of tension between them. And he was wanting to give her drugs to make her unconscious and not follow what she was wanting. And she had already, given birth a few times, and she felt very comfortable and confident with the process and wanted to really be present. So she was fighting off the doctor. And so it was, being born in the midst of a lot of strife. It was male against female. It was different political sides. It was power. And, there was so many dynamics. And I feel like that moment of when I came into the earth really impact me in the sense that I feel like those are the pieces that I've really worked on for the rest of my life. These really looking at the human experience and moments of challenge and friction and upheaval, and being in those places of tension, and how do we create new ways of showing up in life and new ways of being with each other, even if we disagree, even if we have different perspectives and viewpoints. So that's how I came into the world. So there is quite a bit in terms of the history there. And I think because of that, there was a shaping around just a deep knowing of human suffering and human pain, not as an intellectual idea or something that, you kind of experience every once in a while, but like a real sense of what people can do to each other in extreme conditions.
Right. So I feel the visceral relationship with what's possible in our, let's call them darkest expressions, or in your bio, you use poisonous expressions. And in the same sentence, you say that these expressions can be the source of our liberation. So there's a real juxtaposition, there's a real polarity here of the best and the worst of
Yeah.
what we have to offer, what's, the human experience. So I wonder, can you bring us more into, um, yeah, into this sentence of the most poisonous expressions being the source of our liberation?
Yes. I think I'm very grateful to both my parents. When once we arrived in the U.S., my father was really in a major existential crisis. He had, been working for a government as a lawyer and doing what he thought was really good work to support people. Um, and suddenly he finds himself in the US where he doesn't speak the language. And he's working 3 or 4 jobs. He's painting and he's cleaning and he's doing whatever he can just to keep the family going. And similarly with my mom, she was working 3 to 4 jobs, working the night job at a cannery, really terrible conditions, all of this. So they really stepped into this place of doing what had to be done in order to keep the family going. Um, and in the midst of that, my father met Fernando Flores, who was working a lot with philosophy of language and looking at these pieces through UC Berkeley and other institutions and such. And through that work, he really began to find his calling in life, which was ultimately led to the ontological coaching work, transformational work that we do. So he came in contact with that work really from this place of profound care and wanting to support the world in creating communities and people who could learn how to really be with each other and how to care for each other. Um, and so I, at a very young age, would go to conferences and witness these transformative experiences. And I really recognized in those places that I got to see adults actually taking a step back from day-to-day experience and moving into a place of reflection and questioning assumptions and um, allowing themselves to connect with um, emotions and really all of who they are. And so that was very moving to me, to be in a place where people could hold each other with tenderness and care, and to see the transformation that occurred when these spaces and containers were created for humans. So I fell in love with that work at a pretty young age. And I have been, so my father founded the Newfield Network 35 years ago, and I've been working with him. I worked with him for about 20 years. Last year, he stopped working within the organization, but I'm carrying the lineage. And so I've been the CEO for about 15 years now, doing the facilitation work for about 20. And in that time, I've learned so much from working with people just all over the world, getting to be in dialogue with humans who really, I think one of the most beautiful things has just been um, seeing the depth that humans have, and when they're given the space and the care, how that just comes forward in such a magnificent way. So I've learned so much with working with people and seeing how that magnificence can really teach, right? Teach the collective. So being engaged in conversations where there is that acknowledgement of that shared wisdom, and having conversations drop into a level where there's so much learning that we can receive. I think that's one of my father loves questions, loves questions. And so I grew up with the sense of, what are some of those guiding questions that guide us in life? And one of the questions that I received from him was really about, what are we learning? What are you learning in any given experience, no matter how dark it may seem in any given moment? He would often say that, or he often does still say that life's gifts are not always gift wrapped, right? So there's sometimes you have to, right? They come in this like weird clumpy package thing, and you're like, what the hell is this? And then as you unravel and you open and you see it, you begin to discover the gems that are inside. And so I think a lot of the work in my life has been facing the darkness and looking at those places of silence or terror or friction, and looking deeply enough so that one can begin to see their beauty. Um, and so I think that beauty has been one of my um, core core values, core cares in life. Really, as an artist, I'm often looking at life and kind of playing with shapes and angles and words, and looking at how do we actually learn to appreciate whatever it is, whether that's a human being or a given moment, or a struggle we're having. How do we begin to relate to it from a place of actually seeing that it's um, a cosmic privilege to be able to have awareness and be present in life.
Appreciating the beauty and the perspective of having awareness being a cosmic privilege.
Yeah, I think I have a yearning to have people come into contact with the depth that's available in being alive. Like, so often we're alive and we're kind of in this haze, and like touching into the aliveness, I think, is something that I particularly crave and practice, and fall out of and back into and all of that. But I think that invitation to invite us human folks into that depth and that learning um, how to relish life. Yeah.
Is there a practice or experience that you could take, the two of us, but also our listeners who are here through right now to help us come in contact a little bit more with the depth and aliveness that you're pointing to?
Sure. Yeah. So I would offer first to just recognize exactly where you are right now. So, what has your attention? What is your breath doing? What is your posture, the shape of your body? And then just take a moment to befriend your breath. And just allow that breath to be luxurious, delightful, even. And then as you breathe, just begin to notice the space that surrounds you. Just noticing the space in front of you, on either side of you, behind you. Just noticing the space beneath you and above you. And as you continue to breathe, just allow your pores of your skin to soften and open. And then allow your whole body to just soak in the space. And then when you're ready, you can feel your own heart and feel all that resides in your heart. Contacting your own inherent depth, that infinite love that is there. And allowing that love to amplify and expand, letting it cascade and wash over your whole being. And once you're filled up, allow it to spill out through your pores. Let it intermingle with the space. And then allow the love that's in the space to shine in through your skin. And let it seep through the skin into the muscles and tendons. Letting it enter into your bones, into the marrow of who you are. And continuing to breathe. Let's take a moment to connect with the beauty. And just noticing how that beauty impacts your becoming, how that beauty impacts your next breath. Sensing it, experiencing it, being present to the nuance and the texture. Noticing what happens when you anchor in the space, in the love, and in the beauty. What becomes possible here? What becomes possible for you? What becomes possible for others? And what world arises? When you're ready, you can wiggle your toes and your fingers, ankles and wrists. And just coming back. There's a practice that can support us in slowing down, reorienting, making intentional contact. How are you doing, Forrest?
I'm touched by the beauty of the practice. There's quite a shift that's happened over here in the last minutes as you took me through that. Much more spaciousness, more presence, slowing down quite a lot. And I'm really touched by the word intentionality. There's seemingly there's seemingly no limit to the like how much more care and intentionality we can bring in the moment. It's like it there's seemingly always more capacity to slow down, more capacity for intentionality and more care available in every moment.
Yeah. Sense that, and I think there's something so important around paying attention to where our attention is, and that we can use the spaciousness around us to really support us. I think very often, for many of us modern day humans, there's such a lived, embodied sense of isolation and individuation that that a practice that reminds us of our inner relationship with life, like the bigger life, we can kind of rest into. Um, yeah, I think it makes a big difference as we move through life, as we navigate our day to day.
What's happening for me as you're sharing this is I've been running recently. Uh, like every Sunday morning, I go run 5 miles type thing when I wake up. Uh, it's kind of a new thing for me. The concept of who I think I am is not a runner, but been running quite a lot and loving it. It's like the ultimate integration practice. Uh, just going out and not having music in or anything like that, just metabolizing and breathing, being with the city. They shut down the one of the biggest streets here in Medellin on Sunday mornings, and all the street vendors are out with lemonade and orange juice and coconut water, and people are playing saxophone and piano, and you're just running down the main road and all the hills that are in Medellin. It's incredible. It's honestly just spectacular. Um, and something I've been reflecting on quite a lot that comes up for me as you've been sharing is um, I notice on the runs there's through 5 miles there's like states that are so open and so expansive. Um, and then there's moments like for example when there's really big hills to run up that there seems to be a lot of wisdom in like looking straight down at the ground and just like contracting and powering up the hill. And I wonder about the wisdom of expansions and contractions. Um, and I want to get your
Yeah,
wisdom on expansions and contractions and the rhythm. And it just feels like, I feel like, yeah,
yeah.
I'll invite you into this.
I love this. It sounds gorgeous. So one of the one of the aspects at Newfield in the coach training program that we do is really look at the repertoire of different body dispositions or different aspects of how we can show up. And so rather than simply prefacing one and saying, this is the ultimate way, right? There is this one way we always want to be expansive or we always want to be X. It's really looking at how all these different facets that we have support us. And that for many folks, as we get older, our repertoire becomes narrower and narrower, right? We walk one way or we run one way. And so to rediscover agility and mobility and ways in which our body moves can support us so much in life. There are moments where uh, we intentionally want more ground, right? Like when we anchor into the depth of the center of the earth and bring our awareness into really having that sense of deep rootedness, right? That may be so essential for a specific scenario or moment in our life. And then there are times when perhaps we want to be really malleable and really like a little flopsy and, wiggly and all of this. And like, can we do that? Or are we just used to being so rigid that that's our only response? And so, as a way of really working our muscles so that we can have that meeting life in a way that really serves. It's so important to have the somatic capacity, right, as well as other aspects such as cognitive or emotional or so forth. But when we're in an embodied place, you're speaking about running and moving, and even in that same thing, like somebody might just collapse, say, "Oh, running is one thing." But I think what you're pointing to is so great because it really exemplifies that even as we have one movement, how we orient to that movement can be radically different and wake up different possibilities, right? Are we grounded? Are we expansive? Are we inward? Are we outward? Are we moving forward? Are we remembering our back, right? What is the same movement running when we connect with it in all these different ways and facets and dimensions? And suddenly there's like an endless richness in the world of running. And I find that that's where I get really excited. It's like really discovering that, oh, when I'm sitting, right, I can have access to all these different ways of sitting or running or standing, or when I'm in a conversation or in a dialogue with somebody, right? What is that difference if my orientation is one of care and one of open heartedness, right? How is the conversation or the dialogue going to emerge differently than if I'm closed off or if I'm contracted or tight? Um, so for me, there's this real time mindfulness or wakefulness to how we are with what we call the whole dynamic coherency, right? All these petals that constitute the patterns of being whatever the I is, right? Forest or Veronica or X or Y. And looking at that dynamic coherence, all those petals of who we are is dynamic. It's constantly moving and shifting and so forth. And yet, even in its dynamism and its motion, it also has patterns and tendencies and habits. And so the more that we can attune to notice those and see where they create hiccups in our way of engaging in life and where do they create possibilities in life. Um, that's what happens to me when I think of contraction and expansion. It's like those are the kind of fundamental movements that are underneath. And we can look at like, what's the volume or the intensity of expansion or the volume or intensity of contraction that is just right. And if you're nursing a baby, what would that look like? And if you're running a marathon, what does that look like? And if you're in a boardroom meeting, what does that look like? And if you're presenting to 100 people, right? So, like, every moment is going to have a different kind of tension or a different kind of dynamism. And when we can see that and we can play with this kind of adjustment, it makes for a beautiful way of dancing with life.
So it sounds like at Newfield, you're training coaches. You're also training consciousness capacities through spectrums and whole being development. Uh,
Yes, absolutely. We talk about really onboarding the observer, really activating that witnessing capacity to notice and to notice more and more subtle shifts and changes and right modifications and alterations that are happening in a human being, recognizing that it isn't just one dimension, right? It's every time we say a word, right, intimately connected, and with that word there is body, there is emotion, there's history, there's culture, like it's all co-arising. And so when we see that flat like full flower blossoming right in every moment, then then we're in contact with that kind of depth that I was speaking about and the aliveness. Um, and we can notice where there's a dissonance, there's a mismatch, or we notice when there's like full congruency, right? All of those pieces begin to show up. So we can engage in a certain kind of inquiry and travel through, traverse through different conversations and territories with a human being.
one of the potential dissonances that I'm noticing in the moment is I notice being with you. There's this feeling of like, um, mm, my experience of you is you have so much wisdom. And if there's, on my side, if there's like an impulse to try to get that wisdom out of you, it doesn't feel good. It feels like extractive, you know what I mean? Uh, and at the same time, it's like I kind of just want to sit here and listen to you talk. So there's like an inner dissonance of like I feel like I'm getting in the way of myself or something.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. I love that kind of transparency, and I love that you're like giggling about it. It's like, oh, here I am, and that kind of lightness that you're bringing. I find that so often, we human folks, we have a way of like judging ourselves about it, or right, all these things that show up. And there's something so beautiful when we recognize that, like, oh yeah, I've experienced that, like what Forrest is talking about, like me too, I've done that as well. um and there is this kind of like shared joy in just the humbleness of being human that I think is part of the beauty of being in good conversation, when we can see ourselves in each other, um, and articulate it in a way that, like, oh, I feel that in my heart, right? I get that, like that. And I think there's something so joyous about that shared experience.
Yeah, because when I'm here with you, there's a way that I'll just give this a go. I'll just let what's coming through come through, and we'll see what happens. But it's kind of like um, I don't know, being a person who being a human being who was born just outside of Washington, D.C., around a lot of like rah culture, like politicians and business people and billion-dollar ideas and reinventing systems. And there was a lot of like big rah puffed up stuff, and country clubs and cars and a lot of performance, a lot of posturing, a lot of like big important people who really are a big deal, and if you don't understand how big of a deal we are, we're gonna make sure you know these kinds of things. Um, and then when I'm with you, I feel like the intelligence of flowers. You know what I mean? I feel the intelligence of like the earth coming through, and it's so much softer and so much stronger and more palpable. And um, my mind creates associations between North America and South America and what it's like being from the US and what it's like being in Latin America right now. And these different intelligences, like the intelligence of systems and government and finance, and then the intelligence of nature and soil and life. And it's like, I feel like part of the intelligence of people like me from Washington, D.C. would be like, um, to shut the fuck up and listen. So that's part of what's happening to me. Is like I kind of just want to shut the fuck up and listen to like the way more intelligent intelligences talk.
My sense is that there's such a need for integration and for honoring and respecting all the different intelligences, right? There's, in my sense, it's like it is that weaving together. It's like how beautiful when financial intelligence and what you call flower intelligence come together. Like, what does that look like? With curiosity, right? Like, what would happen if those like synergistically mixed and created something? And I feel that that's so deeply like at Newfield, like our practice is like, how do we deeply listen to each other and say, like, you've got something amazing, and so does every other human being. And when we actually open up spaces where we can hear each other, like we're not debating, right? We're not fighting. We're actually pausing and creating a space in which your voice, we trust, has so much intelligence and wisdom, and we can listen to it and receive it and be shaped and impacted by that. And then the next voice shows up, and it's just as stunning in its own way, in its own right. But it's, to me, it's like that coming together. Like there's so much divisiveness on this planet. It's heart-wrenching for me. And it's like, how do we begin to really invite people to learn to deeply listen? And I think this is what I'm like so in love with the arts, because I feel it's like I paint and I do poetry and I'm baby learning like tiny bit learning piano, like, but I feel like all the arts for me really illuminate this capacity for us to increase our empathy and our compassion and our connectivity with one another, because they invite us to see things in relationship, right? Like every time I paint, I learn so much. It's like there's a relationship between space and there's a relationship between shapes and color harmonies and values. And how does everything fit on one canvas? Like it's all a oneness. And yet there's all these different components, right, coming together. Or with poetry, like the cadence of the word and the brevity or the sharpness, or like, all of these word world correlations begin to arise as we craft. But in order for us to attune and be attentive to all these facets, it's like we have to start, I believe, with a ground level of just recognizing that each human is legitimate and each human has their dignity and each human is worthy of being listened to, whether that's flower intelligence, whether that's, earthly intelligence, whether that's somatic, emotional, whatever, like out of all the little lines and hootie schmooties, right? Out of all of them, like when we bring it together, I think that it just catapults the power that is there. And recognizing also that we may have strengths in certain arenas that we've cultivated, and then we may have areas where it's our edge, or we don't know, or it's something new and we feel insecure or small or not sure. Like all of that resides simultaneously in us, right? So when we kind of take off that, what I listen to for us, as you mentioned, like that mask, like, oh, I'm important and let me show you. And that's what I want you to, that's the assessment I want to receive from you, that I'm really important. I feel like when we allow ourselves to be fully human, then we can see, oh, hey, here's an area that I can support you in, and here's the area you can support me in. And suddenly we're in a different kind of reciprocity and a different kind of relationship that I don't know. I just find that that's a place of such extraordinary beauty. I mean, I just always come back to beauty. Like, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful to see people supporting each other. Like what moves me is when I see humans like being good to each other. And that can be something so simple. Like the other day, I was at the symphony at the Mackey Auditorium in Boulder, and there was this little elderly woman with a cane. She was really hunched over. She was walking really slowly, and this other woman just said, would you like to come into the line ahead of me? And it was such a small gesture, but it was so meaningful. It was like she's attentive enough to recognize that this human could use some support, and she offered it to her. And there's all these like acts of goodness that people do every day. And I think when we can receive that, it just, I think, strengthens our hearts.
There's been many moments in the last moments where it feels like collective intelligences are coming through us. It's like it doesn't feel so much like Forrest and Veronica having a conversation. It's like different, like life itself is speaking through you in certain moments. And it felt like for a moment there that like, I don't know, financial intelligence or something was coming through me. So I'm just noticing that there's certain moments where it feels like something other than Forrest and Veronica is going on. Um,
Yeah. Well, I think in sense that that's often the case, right? Like when we're speaking with someone deeply, I, that like the person becomes a portal for all of humanity. And I think being being able to be present with that fullness is a practice that I think humans in 2026 and onwards need to cultivate, right? How do we be with that fullness of being human? How do we be with the messy parts and the I'm not sure parts and the despair parts and the yearning parts and the anxious part? Like, how do we be with all that is in our world today? Um, yeah, I mean, I have a daughter. She's just turned 17, and I as a mother, it's like I want a world where she gets to be awake to humans being compassionate and caring, and she knows how to care back. She knows how to be generous to others. Um, and so this practice of cultivation of self, in order to cultivate good relations, how do we learn to be with each other in a completely different way? And I think, at least in the West, and right now, it's like everything is about efficiency, 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 production and efficiency. Like there's so much emphasis, and it's like, okay, we can do it really fast. But like, did we enjoy doing whatever we did really fast? Did we connect? Did we get to say, yay, we did that together and celebrate that that's what we did? Or did we just get it done? And it's not that there aren't moments where we need to just get it done, but I don't think that that's at the heart of it.
yeah, I'm just in love with this possibility of I told you when we were together in Montana, I've been running a consciousness incubator for investors, and I just love this. Like the phrase flowers and finance keeps coming to me. It's like, what's the intelligence of flowers have to say about finance and financial structures and investing and our like financial social scapes? Like I just feel like that is such a rich potential exploration.
Oh my gosh, yes, I can see many trajectories where that could go.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's so beautiful. I mean, that's just such a gorgeous way to braid together something that is often presented as desperate. Um, and so, yeah, I think like asking ourselves new questions that we haven't asked before, seeing something from a new angle. And I think, conversation means changing together, right? It's about turning towards. Um, And so I believe that when we're engaging in good conversation, it's exactly what happens is that our perspectives expand. Like, oh, suddenly I get to include, right, your wisdom. And suddenly I get to include your wisdom. And so every conversational exchange has this possibility of expanding who we are, how we see, how we observe the realities that we, bring forth. And so this way of bridging and connecting and seeing the new possibilities in that mix is so important these days. I mean, I think we tried the isolation route, kind of went above and beyond in that direction, and now we're recognizing the limitations that reside there. Yeah.
I want to come back to this line that you said, that when we I think I'm paraphrasing here. I don't think I'm giving you back verbatim, but it was something like when we drop deep enough or when we connect deep enough in connection with another, we become a portal for all of humanity. I want to hang out here with you more in being a portal for all of humanity.
Yeah. Well, my sense is that, every human I've ever encountered has suffered somehow, right? And every human I've encountered has cried and has felt some level of despair and has had moments of tremendous joy and celebration and triumph and right all of that. And and I think too that so often, for example, emotions we understand as like my own personal emotion, and yet emotions are something that are also shared, right? Like we experience gratitude, right? We experience different virtues, emotions, or moods, like, and that they aren't just personal. There's an aspect that is definitely unique to an individual, but there's also a collective sense. um, and so not just with emotions, but with so many other aspects of being human. um, and so I think that when we listen deeply and we hear those aspects of a person, as well as like a deep purpose or value or inspiration, or like what is that thing that this person cherishes and is their lifelong curriculum, um, I think that that touches into that place of humanity. Mm, yeah. And also that we have, all of our, growing up aspects of ourselves in us, right? We have like the inner 2-year-old that's just like in a tantrum right now. And like, and we have that part that's all like you're frustrated, like all of it. It's like it's just all in there. And it's just a matter of, you know, recognizing that. Um, I just my sense is so often we're taught to present a certain way. And there's so much efforting and laboring and like presenting a certain way. And when we can kind of just recognize that we can be, I think there's a huge amount of relief, but there's a huge amount of energy that then can move forward into something else, into our passions and our initiatives and being of service to the world.
Sigh of relief over here, just taking in what you're sharing.
Yeah. I find that when we're in spaces and in the presence of a sense of like, the sense of really just being cared for who we are. I don't know if you've ever had that experience for us, where there's a sense of, oh, this person just loves me. Like, it doesn't matter if I mess up. It doesn't matter if I do whatever. Like, I know that they just care for me, and I think that when we're in the presence of someone who just cares for us, regardless, um, that it's like, speaking of flowers, it's like a certain kind of flower blossoms within us. And I sense that when we can do that for ourselves and for each other, right? Like, what is it like for us to love ourselves with all of our, whatever we want to call them, imperfections, shortcomings, blah, 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 right? Insufficiencies, all these perceived things, but to just still care for ourselves. I think we live so often these days, many of us at least, with the sense that we're insufficient and we're broken and we're really not okay. And we just like spend a lot of time kind of don't let anybody know that that I'm broken or that this part's not right, and yeah. And I think that's some of the work, is to actually look deeper than those perceptions and those things that we've been taught, that our cultures have very often infused us with.
And for me, that often looks like spending a lot of time trying to get love through whatever it is. It's like, oh, I'll go do X and get love, or I'll manifest Y and get love, or I'll achieve Z and get love. It's like life just becomes about, I'll do something to prove I'm good enough for the love that I want or need or know I should be having on some level. It's like this should not be something I have to earn, you know.
Yeah, we all have our tactics, right?
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
like the striving or the hiding or the right. There's so many tactics that we and strategies and ways we fall into. And that's the thing. It's like you're not alone in having your, all strive or achieve this. Like, I'm not alone in whatever forms I do, right? It's actually happening all around us. Um, and so just even I think there's a liberation coming, you had asked about that a while ago, right? There is something so liberating around the articulation and the speaking and bringing that into transparency in a caring space, right? In a space where the listener is holding you with dignity, right? There's something so important about being deeply witnessed as a human being. I think that how we develop and how we become is radically shifts radically with who we're in relationship with, right? If I have someone who's holding my dignity and witnessing me through that lens, regardless of what I'm unveiling or what I'm sharing or so forth, um, you can imagine what that how that would unfold over time versus remaining silent or muted or right in a different place. And so this being in relationship, it's not just like a nice thing that happens, but I think it being in relationship impacts our own development, our own unfolding, our own becoming, our own blossoming of the gifts that we're able to bring. So being in good company, I think, really matters.
Now, what's happening for you, for what's happening for you, what's happening for me as you say this is it's so interesting that we use the word company for business. And I've never, there's a clicking that's happening for me right now of like the company that you keep, who you surround yourself with. Uh,
Love it. Yes.
just never landed like that before.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm. Will you tell me about the name Newfield Network? What does Newfield mean? What's the, yeah, help me.
Well, the line that we say at Newfield is when more of the same is no longer an option, a new field of learning is required. So often what we're speaking about is recognizing that there's that learning is a historical cultural phenomenon, and how we understand learning has changed with history and with time and with place. And currently, we're in a time where learning dominantly means acquiring information. I've learned something if I have the information, and it's like an ownership thing, right? Like I now have this information, I learned it. But there's so many kinds of learning. And at Newfield, we're speaking about a kind of learning that is a transformative experience that, oh, right, if I'm present with you and I listen to you and I listen to your wisdom, how does that alter my dynamic coherency? How does it alter who I am? And so the learning becomes a fully embodied learning, right? There's, as I mentioned, there's the linguistic aspect, there's the emotional, there's the somatic. So I'm not just learning something like now I have information, but rather, how has this learning shifted my being, the essence of who I am in terms of um, really impacting me? How am I transformed? So the learning that occurs at Newfield is a transformational learning in the sense that we're recognizing that, for example, if I learn something through resentment, or I learn the same material or the same content from a place of gratitude, how does that shift what I have learned? It's completely different. How I interpret it, what I do with it, how I value it, all of those things change. But we're often not taught about those aspects. So, where am I learning from? What is my history with learning? What prevents me from learning? What supports me from learning? What is learning? Like, asking these bigger questions so that we don't just take learning like we all have a shared understanding of what learning is, but rather we can inquire into learning and really begin to say, what is learning? Like, hold it as a question, not like we've arrived at the answer, but if we just sit with the question, what do we begin to learn about learning? And so often we talk about that in today's world, it's requiring a new kind of learning. I mean, so many new things are happening so rapidly. And how do we be in relationship to that? Do we have a doomsday narrative, right? Do we have a, oh, everything will be resolved with technology narrative? Like recognizing and bearing witness, right? As I mentioned before, onboarding this observer to notice, how are we being in relationship to learning? Um, and so these are the kinds of conversations that we begin to enter into. So, new field comes from this recognition that we're in a time that requires a new kind of learning, a new field, a field, an interrelational space that can support us as human beings, right? The sense and network, it's like we're coming together as a community. There's it's not a lonely endeavor, right? The time of like the lone hero has kind of come to an end. So it requires a community. It requires more than one to learn from each other. It isn't just one teacher and then pupils, right? Like that format, or I'm going to get an A on my test. Like in the West, it's a very individual sense of what learning is. I memorize this and then I get an A on my test and then I learned it. This isn't that. And I think that in order to revise it, it's not just a cognitive shift. It requires like, oh, maybe I breathe differently as I'm learning something, right? Maybe I hold my breath when I'm learning something because I think I need to get it right. What does that do to your learning? So we begin to really examine and inquire about this orientation and relationship we have to the learning process. Does that give you a sense?
Deeply.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think coming back to the sense of the sacred spaces, what are the spaces that we intentionally curate to support us in learning in a new way, where we can be awkward and weird and strange. And, usually when you start learning something new, you don't necessarily look perfectly graceful, right? It's like you have to have these space for all those like funky edges, sharp, resistance, all of that emerges. It's like, how do we, yes, that's part of the learning process, and the setbacks and falling back and ups and downs, and like recognizing that that is learning, right? It's not just this like endlessly upward slope of moving towards more. Learning is a full body experience. And so how do we become humans that can learn, that can unlearn, that can relearn? So learning itself is at the heart of what we practice, how to be a good learner.
So how do we be a good learner? How do we be a good learner?
Yeah. So we found that there's lots of facets to that answer. And one of the important things is what we call enemies of learning. And when we can recognize what are the enemies of learning, that's one piece. And the other piece is, as I mentioned, keep mentioning before, because this is really at the heart of the work that we do, which is observing, right? Really onboarding the observer, really bringing in our awareness and our attention so that we get to witness ourselves. And I believe, we could talk about many more facets, but those are two essential pieces. So when we look at enemies of learning, for example, an enemy of learning, I'll share just a couple. There's a huge list, but a couple of them. One is getting it right. Yeah. So many people, when we learn something, we think we should already know it and we should already have it perfectly figured out. So that can prevent us from just recognizing, oh, I don't know, right? When we declare, I don't know, we're can open up a space to then learn. But for many of us as adults, there's shame, there's, embarrassment, there's, I should already know how to do this. There's all these components that show up. So when we can see them and say, oh, there's that enemy of learning, right? I should already know this. So I'm resistant to going to the first class or to engaging in whatever practice because I should already know this. So there's that sense of I should know it, or I have to have it perfect. Um, so those are some enemies of learning. Another very common enemy of learning that we talk about is there's no time. I don't have time. There's no time to learn. This happens all like there's no time. So it's like I have to get it instantly. Otherwise, right, I can't hang out here and take the time to actually receive it, digest it, metabolize, practice, engage, make mistakes, inquire, right? So those are some of the pieces that when we can see and spot our own enemies of learning, that's can be a flag for us to just pause and reorient, or get support or ask for help. Um, yeah, those are some I think that make us. And then the other piece would be, the things that actually support us in the learning process. Can I be compassionate with myself in this moment? I don't know how to do this. Usually there's so many narratives that come along with that. If I don't know how to do something, I'm a failure, I suck, I'm terrible, I'm not worthy, I don't have value, because value comes from knowing, and we think knowing is something that we should already have in order to be, I mean, dominant narratives I'm talking about. I just said a lot.
I'm something like in awe or shocked or just really noticing how much impact our conversations having. Like there's quite a lot of transformation happening over here uh, in our exploration. So I just want to include that. Like there's quite
Yeah.
a, there's
What are you
quite,
noticing?
um, well, I love, I mean, there's so many things you've said that in the actual words, it's like I'm just hanging on the words or something like that. Like it's just like so satiating. Um, and then there's the transmission underneath it where you're speaking from and the embodiment. And so there's as the waves are pouring through you and pouring into me, it feels like well, first of all, I notice a really there's like there's a longing in me or something getting activated in me to help connect more people with you and Alexander and Newfield. Like I'm like more people need this, more people need you, more people need this medicine, this teaching. Like I just love you both so much, and uh, I always am impacted by you, and it's there's something moving in me of like I wonder if there's ways I can support more people. Um, Getting in relationship with you two and with Newfield. That's one thing that's happening in me. Noticing the shared resonance. And when we were in Montana, I was telling you about my group, Luminous Labs, and what we're doing. And we're singing the same song in a lot of ways. And it also feels like there are differences or maybe synergies or collaboration opportunities. Like I'm just really going, I wonder how we could synergize and collaborate and make each other better and benefit each other. It feels really symbiotic and generative and fun. Um, so that's happening for me. And um, there's been impulse on this call. Like, gosh, I wonder if I could get Veronica to meet with my team and me. I wonder, like, we have every couple of weeks we meet with different practitioners and like just take in their teachings and transmissions. And it's like we're all going through our own processes, but we're also going through them in connection with each other and as an organization and as a team. So I'm like, I wonder if I could I wonder if I could talk Veronica into doing some group work with us. I feel like that would be really fun. And I just feel like I mean, to put it simply, I just feel more myself being here with you. Like I feel more free and just tranquilo. Like, just so that, just like there's just a softening and relaxing and just like a that's nice. I don't even know what I was posturing as at the beginning of this conversation, but somehow that's softened and I've just found a way into a way of being that feels a lot easier and simpler. So it's a few things I'm noticing. I don't think I scratched the surface, but those are some things. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that softening and simpler. Yeah, I find that often those two things are so powerful. Just coming into simplicity and softness can be so supportive in our lives. Yes, I love that you've chosen those words. And I'm happy to have more conversations at some point as well. If you're curious about anything else, Forrest.
Question opens a pretty vast field. Let me just hang out here for a second. Like, just what am I curious about? Are you kidding? The word daughter is coming to me. I know that you're a daughter. I know you have a daughter. For most of this podcast, I have felt the presence of my daughter, who is not here yet physically, but I know her pretty well at this point. Uh, so I feel a theme of daughters here in this podcast. And um, I just want to offer you the word daughter and see what happens.
Oh my goodness, that's quite a rich word for me. I feel like my daughter is such a teacher in my life. I've learned so much from her. Um, yeah, when I hear the word daughter and I connect with my own daughter and just the honor of having a daughter, I makes me weep. Makes me weep with just cracks my heart open. Um, yeah, cracks my heart open. I think and sense and feel that she's taught me how to love in a deeper way. And I'm so grateful for her teaching me that. Um, yeah, there's a certain kind of joy and lightheartedness that I experience with her that mm, that I don't know if I have words in this moment, but what came to mind is a poem I wrote a while ago, and it actually I refer to her in that poem. Can I share that poem? Yeah. So let me find it because I was not anticipating this, but let's see here. It might take me just a moment to find this poem I wrote. Let's see. It's not opening in this one. Let me try it again here. I found the method to arrive. Hold on. So I found my poems, so now I just have to get to the page, which is going to take me a little while. Almost there. All right. Here is the poem I wrote. Just take a sip before. Okay. Sometimes I exhale and I let the nakedness of my body slip to the bottom of the lake, as if I were a drop shot sinker slicing through the thickness of the solid wet, plummeted to the sandy sediment. Sometimes I open my eyes and I take in the wet world of the nebulous and the surreal, the out of focus precision that only comes from the dark depths. The saline water, pungent and fierce, cradles me in its dewy cocoon. Sometimes I allow the long hair of my youth to explore, daring as I once was. Sometimes I notice the way water softens stones, persistent, constant, and perpetual. And I dream of my daughter's long copper locks, bountiful and beautiful, submerged and suspended deep in the underbelly. Sometimes Jupiter rides his carriage with his entourage of 80 moons and moonlets, lighting my tentacles, which have now sensed the sap green algae and the Cripple Creek turquoise. Sometimes, anchored in the wisdom that comes from facing my childhood terrors, I inhale and float to the top, bobbing buoyantly where water meets air, inundated with what is holy and real.
I'm washed away in some kind of experience that has qualities of like long, wet hair that feels very feminine. And I mean, the best words I have for it is that I just feel like I'm in the experience of being a woman right now, being a younger woman. That's the experience I'm having.
Yeah. I would say my I would say that I experience a sense of courage and strength from my daughter, um, to face the darkness and to summon courage for the sake of life, for the sake of beauty. In facilitating transformative conferences and teaching, coaching capacities, and having that privilege of being with people all across the globe. They've had people from all over the world. They've worked with over 70,000 people. And what I see in humanity and working with all these people is the amount of goodness and the amount of courage that humans have is astounding. And somehow that's so often not voiced. So there's something about allowing ourselves to be inspired by each other, to support each other in our greatness. And I don't mean the masky kind of greatness. I mean like the inward, the inward greatness that we all have.
These words you're using, courage and greatness. It's I don't quite know how to like there's a gesture I'm making with my hand for anyone who's not watching on video and just listening on audio. It's like squeezing a lemon or making a fist. Um, and it feels like getting in touch with what's most essential and precious. And um, I've really been with this quote today that I say all the time, but today I've said it 5 times in voice notes to people and stuff. Like it's just been really active. It's like we can literally do anything. We can literally do anything, but we cannot do everything. So what's the thing? And I feel that when I'm taking in these words of courage and greatness, it's like it's not this big, I don't know, flamboyant greatness that we were talking about earlier, but it's like it's a greatness of participating. It's a greatness of playing, of engaging and turning towards, being with, and tending to something essential, tending to something that really matters, and knowing how important that is. And it takes a lot of courage to do that in the world we're living in right now.
I agree.
And it takes good company.
Hmm. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Whereas this has been beautiful. It has been a delight to be with you and to be with you in this way with shared dialogue and inquiry and exploration, bringing forth a sense of wonder, just a sense of awe of being alive.
Thank you. You mentioned earlier that the conversation means to transform and transform with, and I would say that has absolutely happened here for me. So thank you so much. And yeah, if there's anything else you want to share before we pause for today, I'd love for you to just let people know how to get in touch with you, or where can listeners go to be in connection with you more.
Yeah, thank you. So our website is newfieldnetwork.com, and we offer 2 programs a year in the spring and the fall. And they're very much, our cohorts are that creation, that co-creation of that sacred space for deep reflection, for really learning how to human better together. And what we often find our grads um, care about each other so much that they're often, I'll get messages from people saying, I've been with my study group for 15 years now, or I became business partners with blah, blah. It's this community that just ends up um, in such a place of deep care with each other. It's quite astounding to see. Um, and we have a network, we have a community, a global community of people, and people that are grateful for being alive and for being in relationship to life and wanting to give back, wanting to be of service, wanting to do good work in the world and doing it from a very empowered place, a very human, real, authentic, genuine place. And so, yes, I invite anyone who wants to join to come visit our website. You can speak with Quentin Finney, who offers conversations to just check in. And if you're curious, want to know more. So, yeah, look forward to meeting whoever wants to join. Yeah, thank you, Forrest.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, be well.
Hey, everybody. Until next time, we love you.